there is an elephant in the room, and it's not this, or this. The elephant in the room is where the Frieren story will be taking us, knowing that 1,000 years into the future has been implanted into the story. Meaning what? We will see the life cycle of Fern, Stark, and Zine in any potential more legacies down the line. That's right, we're going to see everyone get old and cry for our make-believe characters that we will project our real-life characters onto. But first things first, it's another day in the Frieren Manga hiatus. Yamada Kanehito and Abe Tsukasa are still sick after delivering many scripts to the great mage Serie, the feet goddess, where she denies every single one where she gets yeeted. However, this time Kanehito did some misdirection and presented an updated script to a random fan instead. And when he opened it, it said, this script passes. I believe we will see even beyond Oreo, which actually gives us a rough estimate as to when we could potentially see some time skips. Frieren traveling with Fern, Stark, and potentially making Zine a mainstay again. That is, another 10-year journey to make it to Oreo, aka Heaven, the place apparently located by the Demon King's castle up north by Ende, to ultimately reconnect with spirits of the past. It's a journey to try to get to know Himmel, but Frieren already said it herself, what her next path in her journey will be. That is, to get to understand humans better, with Himmel's spirit just being the catalyst, while everything else around her gets reinforced with her past experience with the hero's party. It's like a second round or a second chance to not make the same mistakes and cherish the time you have, because someone like Frieren will ultimately have to repeat that process over and over again. To me, the next big phase after Oreo, or even after Fern and Stark's passing, is reconnecting with Kraft the Monk, because he has already went through this similar process like Frieren, but I will get to that in a bit. Honestly, Kanehito could just make this new 10-year journey the entire story of Beyond Journey's End, but there are many other factors, but mostly from Schlatt's character, that leads me to believe that we can see a story spanning 1,000 years into the future, with 1,000 years in the future being the end of Frieren. The most likely scenario that Kanehito has cooked up is Fern and Stark getting together and forming the relationship that Frieren and Himmel never got to experience. Goatee Priest gets to live out his adventures with or without Gorilla Dubs, and everyone's children and their children are going to be babysat by Frieren forever. Or the story can just keep doing what it's been doing, because 1,000 years is too long, and when you can milk a franchise, you milk it. Or we can go the tragedy route where legacies die to form anew, to repeat that entire cycle all over again. You can interpret that statement as humans infighting amongst humans, destroying ourselves from within, like how the Foundation Festival arc is kind of taking us through with the Shadow Warriors and or demons potentially making another comeback. Or you can even think about it from a legacy, non-biological standpoint, meaning sometimes your biological legacies just don't last. Lineages die off, and it's likely why Kanehito chose to have everyone be orphans, because we like to think that having our own kids is the only way to continue a generation. But in reality, it's the qualities you nurture and instill that even if Stark and Fern don't have kids, or if their kids don't make it, even if Frieren is around to help, it's the statues of the Himmel the Heroes of the world that help carry on those qualities you want instilled into that next generation. It's knowing that humanity can continue when tragedy strikes. There are some other stories, like in The Sword of the Demon Hunter, that takes place over about 150 years, and I think Frieren is set to potentially deliver a story that can span for even longer. I know, we still have the Foundation Festival arc, told the Saint of the End, Stark's backstory related to Rivale, the bloody god of war. There's Wirbel's story arc. It's all coming up in the Northern Frontier. Ubel's sister, Lineal, Megane's backstory. So we have a ways away before even thinking about how many years this will probably take now. Because that all sounds like it can all occur within that 10-year window before Frieren's party even make it to Oreo. Or in Tot's case, she's waiting roughly a century for whatever crazy shenanigans she's cooking up that can happen after that 10-year travel to Oreo. So yeah, we have plots set up all over the place in present day in the Frieren story, before even snipping the idea that Fern, Stark, and Zion will get old and we get to see cute little southern land mixed warrior babies. However, what I want to get to is the fact that 1,000 years really does seem like it could be the very last arc of Frieren. It seems to be the time limit of Schlatt the Omniscient's clairvoyance, tied to the hero of the South's battle against him, the 7 demon sages of destruction, various other greater demons. And is there like 7 sages of corruption out there like Qual? Let's discuss why this 1,000 years thing is a thing in the story that we will eventually see. And Kraft the Monk is an elf that we will likely see once again when the story of the travels to Oreo with Fern, Stark, and Goatee Priest is done. I believe the lore of what happened when the hero of the South fought the 7 demon sages of destruction and Schlatt the Omniscient will be a part of the last arc and one of the last explanations of Frieren lore that we really won't get an explanation for years, until Kanehito is ready to finish the story, if it ever does end. Think about this, every major theme, motif, and the biggest lesson behind the Frieren story is the lasting impact you leave in this world. Is someone like Frieren and the legacies of the hero's party, extending the Fern, Stark, Zion, and beyond, shows that 1,000 years from now, humanity can succeed and learn from the past, albeit a bunch of bumpy roads in the process, like what's happening now in the Foundation Festival arc, with Commander Louvre trying to get rid of magic and yeeting the peak goddess. What did Schlatt say to Mach, who knew that Frieren would one day read Mach's memories, openly saying this: "We are in a war for our very existence as demons. We'll be fighting for demons in a mopping up operation 1,000 years from now." What does that tell us? Well, humanity will be deciding whether or not to wipe off demons from the face of the planet. Whether they can or not is to be determined. What was the goal of Mach and the Demon King that we found out in the Golden Land arc? Both the Demon King and Mach wanted coexistence, and so now that 1,000 years from now could be the last ditch attempt to evolve into creatures that defies what Frieren and even Solitaire think that demons evolved from to trick and eat humans. So if demons lasted hundreds to thousands of years to evolve into this one thing to trick and eat humans, is it possible that it takes another 1,000 years for them to evolve out of that? I think that is something that Kanehito could expand upon. I would say just make demons extinct. Another interesting word by Schlatt is we. We could be referencing just the demon race overall, or it could be literally referring to himself. One of the more popular theories, and one stated by the legend, that Schlatt and the hero of the South could still be alive, fighting each other. The fact that the hero of the South and Schlatt are clairvoyant, but we have yet to know how the hero of the South was defeated, and if his clairvoyance saw as far ahead as Schlatt's. That sounds like a grand finale lore that we might only really get to see at the very end, but one where fans think that the hero of the South could have just gotten via gold. There is the fact that we have little to no information about the other 3 demons that he defeated, with only the manga showing how these 3 demons actually look, and the Demon King himself seems to be only depicted once, unless he's not the Demon King in this panel. Ultimately, that 1,000 years is Kanehito's way of delivering if he thinks humanity could continue, or if we just keep making the same mistakes, repeating the same cycles over and over. At some point, we will see Stark's backstory where he might face Rivale. the bloody god of war, the greater demon that massacred his village. We will see whatever is going down with Weirbull, and maybe sharpen Serie at the northern frontier. There's the greater demon Tot, the Saint of the End situation, where her magic will corrupt the world somehow. If you take into account what's happening now in the Foundation Festival arc, Ubel's arc has the potential to extend beyond that arc with trying to find her sister, unless her sister is already in the arc. I guess Lineal and Kanona's secret will also be extremely informative as to how it affects Serie, Ubel, or even Megane's character. There really is so much for Kanehito to cover right now. With so many characters and upcoming arcs to flesh out, it feels like a distant prayer that all that could be already in the works in the Frieren story, but Kanehito has left many doors available to open and close at his disposal, which takes me to Kraft the Monk. Kraft has already hinted that he will eventually see Frieren, likely after the story of Oreo is done, because that is where Frieren will ultimately understand humanity the most, through another 10 years of spending time with Stark and Fern, and maybe Zine. And Kraft specifically mentions in the manga that he will probably see her in about 300 years or so. Why is 300 years seem so significant? Earlier in the same chapter when Frieren met Kraft, he mentioned with Frieren agreeing that they thought elves were extinct because it has been about 300 years or so since they've last seen one. Maybe that one was the Great Mage Minas, maybe it's Millarde, or even whoever this Court of the Sacred Staff elf is, who could be Millarde. 300 years could also be the length of time that elves can comprehend that it's actually been a long time in their life. On a smaller scale, 8 years was not a long time for werewolves to actually know gorilla dubs that long. 300 years is Frieren seeing Stark and Fern growing old at least 3 times, meaning she gets to see their children and their children's children all grow up. But at the same time, they could end up passing away if we get a Tot the Saint of the End type of catastrophe. Once again, that's why I believe orphans are important in the story. Because when you lose your biological parents, there has to be a belief that there are other ways to carry on humanity. But from Frieren's perspective, basically, it's her opportunity going through multiple human legacies over and over to get to understand humanity on the most intimate of levels, from understanding who Himmel the Hero was as a person and understanding maybe her own romantic feelings. Remember that Frieren's closest friend, ally, and sensei was Flamme. But as we can see with this spiritual Spiegel clone early on in the story, it's actually her connection with Himmel that leads her on this path to eventually cross paths with one of the few elves that can relate to her exact situation and experiences. Remember that Kane and Luine barely knew who Frieren was. It hasn't even been a century since the hero's party defeated the Demon King. Sense had to remind Ganao that that elf was that elf from the hero's party, the last of the great mages. 300 years from now, it's likely almost no one will remember Frieren, and if she decides to not see Stark and Fern's legacies due to her adventuring elsewhere, even their children may not even grasp who Frieren was. We are so far away from this, but her character arc throughout 1000 years, it seems pretty clear to me at this point. We are currently in the phase of Frieren understanding humanity through Stark, Fern, and Zine, and Himmel's memories carrying on her current understanding, with the Foundation Festival arc setting up potential 1000 years into the future ramifications. Once Frieren's party gets to Oreo, it should be about 10 years, and we're about only 3 years into that 10-year journey, meaning Stark and Fern will be in their late 20s, Zine might be like 40, with Frieren finally getting answers and to come to grips with her regrets of not knowing Himmel better. But the path to find his spirit gave her all the wisdom she would need from here on out. The journey is the true spoils. Then we will eventually get to the post-Oreo Frieren story that will likely lead to Fern and Stark's old age with the legacies of their children, which will rapidly expand into that 300-year window with Frieren meeting up Kraft and even potentially adventuring together as the forgotten heroes of the past, which will ultimately lead them into that 1000-year future of Schlatz, where we find out about what truly happened with that battle between the hero of the south against the 7 demon sages of destruction and Schlatt. And if the demons can continue to survive, or if humans have decayed so much from within that the cycle of humanity's failure leads to another rise of a Demon King character. The crazy part about the Frieren story is that we are already 147 chapters in, and so many chapters to go to even fathom a post 10-year travel to Oreo, or even 300 years into the future with Kraft. However, it's not a mistake that Kanehito left the foundation for the story to potentially explore or even turn the series into a time skip with new characters, new obstacles to face, and newer lessons to learn before ultimately hitting that 1,000-year marker. I would love to know where you guys think the Frieren story will be taking us. Is it just 10 years to Oreo and then a bunch of time skips to 1,000 years? Or are we doing some Detective Conan One Piece pacing here, with Frieren Beyond Journeysend being ongoing forever, depending on Yamana Kanehito's health and Abe Tsukasa's. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.